Welcome to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Swaglock, and with me today is our beautiful, our cunning, our most incredible host, Chicken.
Woo! That's me. It is maybe. Sorry, I'm not feeling greatest, so bear with me today.
You're all good. You're all good.
I start hacking up a lung. Just, I don't know. Mute me, throw me out the door. I don't know. Do something with me.
Dude, besides being sick, man, what have you been up to this week?
Well, we got a show for you guys. Guess what happened? You'll have to find out in just a second because I want Swag to say because he's probably a lot more excited about it than I am. But it's been a pretty good week.
Yeah, our guild finally got AOTC this season. It's been really exciting making the push. We challenged ourselves a lot, and I'm really proud of us for that. We started right away in Heroic. We've talked about that on the pod, which is a big change for us. Our raid leader pretty early on, like very, very early on into the raiding experience, realized he needed to take a break for a couple weeks, and then even after those couple weeks, take some time just enjoying raid, not leading raid. Yeah. So I've ended up raid leading for the first time ever, like consistently. I've covered a night here or a normal run there, but to raid lead Heroic all the way through, this was a first for me as we were really blind progging some bosses, going in, learning them. It was a lot of fun. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't proud of myself. I would be lying if I said I wasn't proud of myself, and I'm really super proud of the team. Everybody just played amazing, and it's funny, dude. How I remember going into this week, after last week, being like, "Oh, dude, we made it to phase 3 on Ansarek, but dude, we're just not doing it. We're dying to the dumbest mechanics on phase 1. We're just we keep wiping these things. We're not getting this boss down." But we did 2 nights this week focusing on Ansarek. Night 1, we came out of night 1 really not making much progress. We were starting to get into phase 2 consistently, but we weren't making it to phase 3. Hardly ever making to phase 3. And we went into this last night just going, okay, if everybody can play their best, if everybody plays their best, we got this. We got this. And the crazy part, dude, is, granted, part of it, we have a 7% damage buff, so that helps a ton. Helps a ton. But we get to the phase 3, and I think we skipped some mechanics on phase 3 altogether because we killed her so fast. It was just getting to phase 3 with everybody alive and everybody prepared for the mechanics that did exist. That's where it was difficult.
Yeah, I feel like phase 3 wasn't nearly as bad. It was just kind of like that Zymox thing where you kind of just have to place the portals.
Tanks have a weird mechanic going on. There's some stuff, but not too crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say it was probably harder for tanks than it was anyone.
Yeah. Oh, but the big thing, too, is phase 1. Phase 1 is weird because you have so many mechanics happening.
Dude, you got so much,
And they're overlapping each other. And they don't always overlap in the same way. They overlap in, really odd ways between getting the bombs that have to go off, taking care of the web swirlies, or the webs that root you in place, taking care of the web blades, the tank buster. Tank Buster hits hard on Ansarek. Now, granted, I'm perfect in every way, so obviously, I didn't have problems with it.
My gosh.
But it really was something that caused a lot of trouble. So, it was a fun fight, though. I think it was. I think there's nothing more fun than when you've put the work in, and then you finally get that kill after progging. So now we're kind of asking ourselves, are we going to Mythic? The poll's out there trying to figure out if our guild's going to Mythic. We might have to bring in a couple friends from the outside just to fill the roster if we're missing people. But I would like to. If we can get Ansarek down, and we got Ansarek down with time, right? We weren't barely getting Ansarek down. Once we got her down, we really burned her down.
Oh my goodness!
So now now for me, it's okay, you know what? I think we can definitely get the first 4 bosses of Mythic. That would be my goal. But I passed the reins back. I passed reign back to our actual guild, our actual raid leader for the guild. So I'm retired now from raid leading.
Yeah, see, I haven't really looked at too many of the mythic raid bosses. I know typically the first one's kind of like pretty much a like towards the end of like a heroic boss, kind of like just as like an easy kind of feeler. At least that's how. Oh my goodness, Dragonflight. Oh my goodness, I'm like straight. Ugh. Anyways, I think that was like how Dragonflight was, except for oh, the stupid dragon dude. That was kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
With the where you had to like perfectly place the portals, because if you touch them with like even just like a foot, like it killed everyone basically.
Which boss were we talking about again? I zoned out. I'm not gonna lie, dude. I totally zoned out right there. I was looking at some articles on WoW.
Oh no, you're fine. It was the second raid dungeon in or the second raid dungeon. Oh my goodness. The second raid in Dragonflight. Okay. It was the first boss on Mythic, was actually kind of difficult.
Oh yeah, dude. We could not get that boss down. We went in, we tried on Mythic, we just couldn't do it. And I'm not sure if that was just the fight being so difficult, or if that was our raid team still being pretty fresh, right? Like, because I remember that was an interesting one. However, the last season 3, right? I don't think we did it in season 4, but season 3, we got down three raid bosses for Mythic.
Yeah, we got down because we got the first one down really easily.
Mm-hmm.
The second one took us a bit of time, and then we finally got to the third one, and that was in like 1 week.
I think for 3 bosses in 1 week. So you know what? The momentum's there. If we can keep the momentum, I think we got it. However, I don't think people are here to listen to us talk about raid achievements from this week. We're a little late to the party there. I think people want to know about what's been happening in WoW news this week, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah,
dude. There's a lot.
Too much, to be honest.
Yeah. What's been happening, chicken?
You want to know something funny?
Mm-hmm.
The day of WoW 30, and I remember you saying like, oh, like they're gonna have drops. We talked about it last week.
Yeah,
but I don't know why. I just didn't think. I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, I don't need to watch that. Why would I watch that?
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone like in our guild chat and like guild Discord were just like blowing everything up, and I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Dude, people were. I was getting hype.
Wonder what's happening right now. Nothing special, right? And then I was like, oh wait, there's a bunch of stuff that just dropped. Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Before we dive into the main stuff, did you look at any of the classic related news that came out?
A little bit. I'm hoping what you sent me on Discord was a meme, because if it wasn't, that would be kind of weird.
What did I send you on Discord?
That was the classic Shadowlands. I'm pretty sure that was a meme, right?
Yeah. Classic Shadowlands is not coming yet. So the main classic news that we got, because I'm just curious. I know classic's not really something that interests you too much, but there's a few things going on. So classic Pandaria is going to happen. I did see that. Which is going to be interesting, because we just did Pandaria Remix. Now, Pandaria Remix was kind of like a speed run through Pandaria, and it had a bunch of weird things, and you're technically playing on like modern class build. So I do think people are going to be excited to try out like, oh, what was Monk like back when it launched?
Yeah.
I know like Feral Druid was pretty busted. Warlock was super busted back then. I played Brewmaster way back then, and that was fun. I also played some DK and Druid. I think I played Arresto Druid a lot back then. But I wasn't like but I wasn't like super seriously raiding. I was like kind of doing LFR level stuff basically.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is weird to think about, right? Like knowing me now, you're like you were fine with that. But I thought that was like peak. I thought that was like peak at the time.
Like, WoW content. Hey, You're right. It is.
Now, so Pandaria is coming out. We have World of Warcraft Classic. We're jokingly calling it that. We're jokingly calling that. It's really, I think it's Classic 20th Anniversary Edition or whatever. But basically, it's just Classic. It's Classic, except some of the like stuff they added to Classic over time. This will launch with that. The idea is like part of what makes Classic fun is the progress, is the journey with everybody. Because Classics. WoW Classic, the like vanilla option has always existed, even as they've gone up through like Burning Crusade, Wrath, Kata. Classic has always existed on its own, and so people are still doing that. But I think they realize that part of the fun of Classic is the progression of like, hey, we're all starting out fresh again, and so they're launching that. Alongside that, they're going to have hardcore servers that are part of that. So it's forcing people like, hey, you want to start fresh on hardcore all over again? I think there's something fun for people. I know for me, right, like the idea of going to Classic right now is kind of weird. Of like, dude, I don't want to like pop in. Everybody's already like level 60 running around with, I don't know, whatever the cool items, Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, right? Like they already have them. So there is part of it for me is like, oh, dude, that could be fun. Like when that relaunches to like make some characters on Classic during the relaunch, when player activity is up, so you can actually find people to do some like the lower like Shadowfang Keep and some of those lower dungeons, just to remember what that experience was like. That might be enticing to me. I don't know. They did say that that's going to continue up. And I think that was about it for Classic. I think it was new season of Discovery stuff.
Yeah, a new season. Yeah. I've never been a huge fan of Classic, and I think it's just because I never played WoW back then and didn't have an appreciation for it. But I do want to say that I like the direction they're going with it, and I do have like a semi-hot take, but I don't think we're gonna have time for it this podcast. And I think it's a really good hot take about Classic.
Okay.
So we'll probably talk about that next week. Just spoilers.
Yeah. Well, what is the hot take, and we'll bring it up next week just to give people a taste.
I think
if we talk about next week, I don't know, but if we do.
Yeah. I think we should, because I was gonna put it in this week, but there's just way too much to talk about. I want your opinion on if Classic is just going to, like, is Classic killing the game, and is Classic just almost like a recycling event? Like, what's going to happen after Classic, and now it's kind of happening where they're making, like, where you're joking Classic. Is Classic going to turn into what we knew in, like MOP and that kind of era, and as it builds up to Shadowlands and even Dragonflight potentially, as retail keeps continuing and grows with what retail is doing. Like is it just going to be like classic classic vanilla, WoW 2000, right? Like are they just building off of that, and is that eventually going to kill the game?
I mean, my thing is, and we can talk more next week, I don't know if we need to go a ton into it. My thought is just like people who really like Classic and just want to do Classic, they're not going to play retail. I don't think they have any interest in playing retail. Retail WoW, oh my gosh. Years ago, before Classic came out, years ago, the argument was like, man, people just don't understand how much harder WoW was back then. WoW was so much tougher. Like, it took way more. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, leveling was more difficult. But a lot of the difficulty in WoW back then wasn't skill difficulty. The difficulty back then was, like, patience difficulty. Are you willing, like, right, like, you can't get your mount to level 40. And there was something cool about that. There was something cool about being like, wow, these guys are mounted up. And I don't have a mount yet. I'm only level 25, but I got my cat form or something. I think you get that at level 30, actually. That was the original travel form for Druids, was a cat. So anyways, there's elements of that. It's more difficult because it takes, I think, more time to achieve some things, not all things. But modern day WoW is way, way more difficult. In terms of like raiding, in terms of dungeons, it's just harder. It's a lot harder. It requires a lot more skill, and that's challenging. And people like that. So, but not everybody likes that. And so I don't think they really share the same player base, except you have some dudes like right now, like when Classic launches, I think a bunch of content creators are doing like the OnlyFans thing right now, where like I think you have to like take a survey and then it assigns you a race that you have to play, and then you're like grouped up with other people who chose that race. And I don't know all the details of it. I wasn't invited because I guess I'm not cool enough. That's fine. That's okay, guys. That's fine. That's all right. Maybe next time. Maybe in 4 years when we get classic. I don't know. But,
my gosh.
but I just So I don't know if they're really the same audience. And I think the nice thing is at this point, like, dude, this is just free money for Blizzard to be like, yeah, if you don't want to play retail, you can play Classic. And it gives you something to do when retail stuff feels a little slow. If you're like, oh, I really want still WoW type content, but I'm done with my M+ grind. I'm done with like raiding, whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just curious if there'll ever be a time where they add things that just like isn't what we want them to add, and then it comes to the point where it's like, oh, Dragonflight Classic is out, I'm just gonna ditch retail and go back and play that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But like, again, right, Legion would be the question there, right? If they do Legion Classic, which it looks like, based upon an interview that we'll talk about a little bit later, that's a possibility. It's a very strong possibility. In fact, I'm sad that they might skip WoD, because I think WoD would be a great classic. No, looking at Legion Remix. My bad. Legion Remix, not Legion Classic.
Oh yeah.
My bad. I think WoD Remix would be great. WoD Classic would be dumb. WoD Remix would be great. As weird as it is, just the nature of Remix versus nature of Classic, WoD Remix would be really cool. WoD Classic, maybe not so much. But Legion Classic, I think, does kind of bode a weird question, because Legion starts to feel very modern. Your raid fights are feeling a lot more modern. Mists of Pandaria is already starting to step into that territory. Legion's going to step into that territory more. Legion introduces Mythic plus dungeons. So at what point are you no longer playing a classic version of WoW, but you're just playing a different season of modern WoW, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes a little tricky, right? Because let's say Legion launches and people are like, wait a second, Classic Legion M+ is a way better experience than current M+. And then like all the main M+ players go back and create their own like tournaments and stuff for Classic Legion, and it just like decimates the M+, like section of retail WoW. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. So that's where you start to run. That's where the risk is run, is once it starts to feel like too much like modern WoW. Again, though, I think that's why they hit they kind of hit MOP. MOP, I think, is really as far as they truly can go at this point. They hit MOP and went, all right, we're doing MOP Classic, and then we're launching Classic. So I do think they're aware of that to some extent. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this more next week, or maybe not. But I think there's too much to cover on updated WoW news.
A lot of good news coming out.
We need to get into that before I end up passing out due to lack of sleep. Just kidding, due to sickness. Anyways,
yeah.
Let's talk about it. I mean, WoW 30 again. I did not watch it. You, I believe, did you watch it?
Yes, I did. I was actually at work. Sorry if my boss is listening to me right now. I'm at work, and I like put it on to listen to while I was working. And dude, I was getting hyped. I believe this is the end of BlizzCon. I think with the timing, with what was announced, I think this is maybe their plan for what they're gonna replace BlizzCon with altogether. That kind of has me sad. I'm kind of sad about that.
Really?
Yeah, I imagine the BlizzCon stuff will be absorbed into whatever showcase Microsoft does for Xbox, for like their gaming division. When we say Xbox, we just mean Microsoft's gaming division as a whole.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer. I don't know. But also the problem is, if I'm being really honest, Blizzard, they ain't got the momentum they once had, right? Like, they used to be able to pull off BlizzCon because people wanted to go, and like Diablo was hype, WoW was hype, Overwatch was hype, right? Like, you had StarCraft was hype, right?
Yeah.
And then now, like, Overwatch is kind of dying. It's not doing super hot right now. Diablo's good, but it maybe not the momentum it once had, right? Which is fine. That's kind of always been Diablo, though. And then, but then like StarCraft is just gone, right? So like, you got WoW, right? Like, WoW is your main draw for people going to BlizzCon at this point. And so, maybe they're getting to a point where they just can't justify it like they once did, which is a bummer for me, because every year I tell myself next year's the year I'm finally going to go. And now I might have said that one too many times, and I'm kind of kicking myself.
You said it one too many times.
I'm kicking myself for it. I'm sad. Maybe if they ever do it with a live event for Microsoft stuff, maybe we can get the guild to go to that instead. Who knows? But
that'd be cool.
So I think that's the replacement. And at least for this year, that's how they wanted to do it. I don't know if they'll do it again next year. Who knows? I do wish it would have been sick, though, if they could have done a 30th anniversary at BlizzCon. I think that would have been insane.
Yeah, that would have been kind of dope.
But yeah, dude, there's so much happening that they talked about. I think we might as well just talk about the elephant in the room right off the bat. We talked about on the podcast last week with our Guildmaster Spell in episode 10, discussing what we thought might be announced at the event. And she was like, oh, I really hope they announce player housing. That'd be so cool. And then me is like, nah. You know, they'll never announce player housing, right? Like
Dude, I was thinking that too. I was like, player housing, like what?
People have begged for that for years, by the way, Chick. I know like you're a little bit newer to WoW. For as long as I can remember. For as long as I can remember in World of Warcraft, player housing was something people begged for. I remember playing in Wrath with people begging for it. Warlords of Draenor was supposed to kind of sort of have it with garrisons, but they kind of failed. But even then, even if they had succeeded, it wouldn't have been true player housing. And so I remember at the very end, right, it was like, oh, and players have called Azeroth their home, and all of a sudden it cuts to black, and I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, like I was getting, I started crying, bro. I was tearing up because that moment when like years and years of conversation, of talk about something finally pays off, it was beautiful. The question is, will it be good?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a couple, personally, okay, here's my initial thought. I think they need to do a good balance of it being too good versus too bad, if that makes sense. And maybe good versus bad isn't the right words.
Yeah.
I think they need to do a job of making it at least like something that everyone wants to do, but not making it so like unique that like it's the only thing you can do, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I don't want to spend like 20 hours trying to get like my house cool, but like if I could spend like an hour a week like doing stuff to do it, like that would be cool.
Well, also though, I think the way that you're expressing that though kind of plays into why people really dislike garrisons, but also plays into, I think, expectations people have about what WoW has to be like. And so what I mean by that is when we think of WoW, we're thinking like, okay, anything added into the game has to be a time sink, right? It has to be, and it has to be required. It has to be something that like I do every week to give me some sort of player power in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I think player housing is at its best when it is not that, right? It should be it should be something, Chicken, that you can say, yeah, I want to spend 70 hours this week working on my house, redesigning it, refurnishing it, reorganizing it, whatever, because it's just fun. It's just fun for me to do that. I want to do that. I'm having fun with it, right? Like Animal Crossing, whatever, right? Like I'm just having fun working on my player housing. But you should never log in and go, oh, I have to log in for the week or for the day to do my dailies so my player housing can keep up, right? Like that I don't think is as fun. Now, the reality of that is there should be things that you get rewarded for with your player housing for doing. Some of those I think maybe, but I don't know if it's like, I don't know if there should be a player housing specific thing or if it should be tied into just daily quests, raiding, mythic. It almost feels like everything you do should offer a reward to player housing of some kind. And then maybe there's like an extra category that's like player housing specific activities that maybe help increase the size of your player housing or give you more coloration options or styles of furniture or things like that. The problem was though that garrisons unlocked content for you. Garrisons made you gold. Garrisons opened up opportunity to craft faster and more efficiently. Garrisons actually offered a lot of player power. It was also where your I don't want to say work table, but the war table or whatever, you know what I'm talking about there, where you go and you like assign missions. It's like almost one of those like AFK games.
That was in like BFA.
Yep. So it has one of those.
I guess it was in Shadowlands too.
And Shadowlands. They liked them for a minute. The problem though is that mission table, that's what it's called, mission table.
Oh yeah.
The problem though is that garrisons felt like obligated content, right? It wasn't just like, hey, I want to work in my garrison because it's cool to work in my garrison. It's fun to work in my garrison. It was like, oh, I have to go do my garrison. Kind of like Torghast, right? Like kind of like how Torghast could have been really, really awesome content, except it became a chore, right? Like the moment Torghast became something that you were obligated to do week in and week out for player power, it was no longer fun, right? Like because it couldn't be what made it good. Like Torghast was at its best if it was a challenge to climb the ladder of Torghast.
Yeah.
Not to say, hey, I have like kind of like Delves, right? Kind of like how
Yeah.
Delves kind of just became this like, oh, I mean, not as much. Delves are still, I think Delves are better than Torghast, if I'm honest. But well, I
Yeah,
don't know.
they
Actually,
are.
Torghast powers were cool. Torghast powers were freaking cool. But Delves kind of became this thing where it's like, okay, let me just do my 8s and I'm done. Let me do my 8s and I'm done. Let me do
Yeah,
my 8s
it
and I'm
was.
done. Right? Like I don't like Delves. I don't think Delves are that fun to me. They're not. But I had to log in and do my 8 so I could early. I haven't touched a Delve in a hot minute, but early in the expansion, let me log into my 8 so I can get my 616 piece of gear. Let me do my 8 so I can get my 616 piece of gear. So player housing needs to exist as its own function that gets rewards from other content. But if they try to tie it into player power in any capacity, and when I say player power, that doesn't just mean your character's damage output. That also means your ability to make gold. That's a big one, right?
Well, that's true.
All those things, ease of life, right? If making your house better, gives you ease of life things, that's probably also a negative, right? Like if all of a sudden you have an auction house in there because you can work hard enough to get one, that probably then becomes obligated content, right? So if player housing is purely cosmetic and experiential, just in the fact that you want to design this space, I think that's where it wins. It also, though, and this is where people are going to hate me, and I said this last week on the pod, I think player housing is at its best if it is tied to the capital city or the major city of that expansion. Which means, your player housing might have to move to a new location every single time a new expansion comes out. Even if the inside is the same, but just the doorway looks different, right?
Yeah.
Only because I think there's something important about WoW players being able to see other players. And here's why that's also important. To the exact same point we just said, let's say you could put your player housing anywhere you want. And you're like, I want to put my player housing in Thousand Needles. And it's sitting up on one of those spikes in Thousand Needles, and that's where I'm at. And then you get to your player housing and you're hanging out in there, and then you realize, wait, crap, I can't use the bank or go to the auction house. I'm not cool like Swag, and I didn't spend $90 to buy a mount that Blizzard probably should have never put on the store. Right? Now I have to go Hearth all the way back to Dornegal or whatever, Silver Moon. Yeah. I guess next expansion might be a capital city. There's some new assets they're working on. So, but whatever, right? Go into the new capital city for this expansion. Go do my crafting orders. Go work on put stuff in the bank. Go upgrade my gear, and then let me go all the way back to my. Right, so your player housing can't be inconvenient to go to, right? It needs to be fairly convenient to be at.
No, I agree.
But then also too, maybe it's good. Maybe it forces players out into the world. Maybe it says, no, we want you to explore Azeroth again. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts. I hope they do a good job with it.
Do you get a special hearth for your house, maybe?
I think there will be one. So if you looked at the roadmap, when they first made the announcement, there was a roadmap, and at the end of the roadmap, there was this like almost Hearthstone-y looking thing. It looked like it was more like 3-sided versus like an oval. And it had like one of those like Hearthstone-y-ish kind of swirls, but a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
It was like yellow, right?
And then they changed it.
And then they changed it to be way more obvious that it's for player housing. And so I'm assuming that is probably your player housing Hearthstone, similar to how you had a Hearthstone for your garrison. Chicken, have you ever even been to a garrison in WoW?
Nope.
Really? Dude, I'll take you to my garrison sometime.
Actually, no, I definitely have been to your garrison.
Okay, yeah. It's not very furnished because mine's post WoD. I don't have my account from WoD anymore.
I didn't think you could go to other people's garrisons.
Yeah, if you're in their party, you can. Yeah, you can check it out.
Oh, okay. See, that was going to be like one of my questions of, can you go to other people's housing? But I think you just answered that question.
I think so. If there's any way they can make it where like guild housing is all near each other, that'd be really cool, right? I don't know how that would happen, but that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think you did kind of capture what I was trying to say. Basically, hey, how do they make it so that it's not like almost like a chore?
Yeah, not obligated content. Yeah,
it's not obligated, and it doesn't give people like an edge on if this person does it, they're going to be better than the person that doesn't do it, right? But I guess my only concern is, how is it going to take away from other aspects of the game that are also to the point of, well, how am I trying to say this? Is it going to take away aspects of the game that some people enjoy doing minimally and not like a whole lot. Like for example, like certain people with professions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like myself included. Like I don't mess with professions too often. I do a little bit of engineering on my main just because it's kind of neat, and I do like the weeklies and like outside of that, I don't really do too much. But is that going to take away my time from that and focusing it on player housing, because player housing makes me more gold, or it does X, Y, and Z better, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. So like in the example you set, right? If it feels like I gain player power, again, player power can be gold. It doesn't have to be attack power. If I gain player power through my house, that becomes a problem, right? So maybe it's like, hey, I can make more gold through my player housing, or hey, if I level up my player housing enough, I will get helpers, or I'll get tools that make my crafting faster, or I'll auto craft things on the. Sorry, I burped. I'll auto craft things on the trading, not the trading post, the whatever. What's the not the auction house? What's the other one?
Oh, the crafting orders.
Yeah, right. It will auto handle crafting orders. I just put the materials in. Right now, that's an extreme.
Yeah.
That's an extreme. But then now you feel obligated, like I have to grind out to get this ranked up. I think the best example of what player housing should be is it should be like dragon flying. It should be like dragon riding, right? Like. How often, maybe not you, but for me, I'll hop on my dragon and just fly around.
Yeah.
If I don't know what to do, I just fly. It's fun. It's just fun. And it offers me nothing but just being fun.
Yeah. And that's kind of, that's how I treat mining most of the time. Yep. Sometimes I just fly around and mine stuff just because.
Another great example, right? Like you and I have plenty of friends who love to just explore Azeroth and collect everything. They love collecting everything, right? If it's collectible, they want it. You and I feel almost no obligation to take part in any of that unless we see something very specific that we aesthetically want.
Yes.
If that's all player housing is, if all player housing is like, yo, go collect things and show them off in your house, cool. Like, whatever, right? Like, I will probably find the, like, 5 items that I think are sick, and I'll go out and collect them, and I'll be content. I'll be done, right?
Yeah.
And even in that, I'm not feeling obligated to do it. I just go, oh, this is cool. This gives me something to do in my spare time. But if I only have, let's say, 2 hours to log in this week because I'm super busy, then those 2 hours can be spent running some dungeons and getting ready for that week's raid, right? So, like, I don't feel like I have to sacrifice that time. She's like, oh, hey, I have bonus time. Here's something fun to do. That, how can WoW add in some extra things that are just fun to do and not necessarily player power related?
Yeah. I think that's you're right. Yeah, I don't know how that happens. So I'm hoping they do it well. It's hard. I think they do have to teeter the line a little bit of and like you brought up the other point of auction house, like now that they brought back the Brontosaurus, like why can't you have an auction house in your player housing now?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
By the way, that's a great point. How many people do you think bought the Brutosaur because they thought it was just a cool looking mount? Versus how many people bought the Brutosaur because they said, this gives me more player power because I can now access the auction house while I'm in the middle of raid.
Yep.
Right. Oh, shoot. We wiped at raid and I realized I don't have my potions. Let me go buy a couple real fast, right? Yeah. That, again, by the way, that was me. I was like, dude, this is so stinking beneficial that, like, I gotta have it. So, the player housing question is going to be an interesting one. Blizzard's got to pull it off well. I'm hoping they do. They have a great habit of copying what other games do and making it better. I mean, WoW was what? EverQuest? They were like, we love EverQuest. Can we make a better EverQuest? Right? And they pulled it off. And so Blizzard historically has done that well. There are games that have really good player housing. Final Fantasy is one that comes to mind right away. There's games also that have player housing that's not that great, like Skyrim. So we'll see how Blizzard chooses to pull this off and what they can create.
Yeah, so you brought up a little bit, and we're kind of going out of order of our show notes here.
Okay.
But you brought up a little bit about the roadmap. So let's talk about the roadmap a little bit. I mean, it looks like we're going to have season 2 here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was it was actually confirmed. What it's going to be like December 17th or something, right?
No, that doesn't feel right to me.
It doesn't?
I'd take a look at the roadmap. I imagine we're going to see it.
Oh, sorry. December 17th is when 11.0.7 comes out. Sorry.
Yes, that makes sense. I'm suspecting we'll probably see new season sometime after New Year's, maybe closer to February, if I'm being honest. One of the things that people don't realize, I've heard a lot of complaints. So 11.0.5 came out, the current patch, really buggy, right? Like bosses were feeling broken, tuning was whack, right? Like, and people are like, "What's going on with Blizzard? Are they just not caring anymore? Do they?" And everybody's complaining. They're like, "Blizzard sucks now. They don't even know what they're doing anymore." But you have to remember, patch to 11.0.5 came out really fast, like wicked fast, because they were trying to get ahead of the 20th anniversary event, and that was a big deal. And I don't blame them, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, Blizzard, you get one shot at a 20th anniversary event. Take it, right? Like, if that means the game's gonna be a little buggy for a minute, cool, whatever, right? Like, but celebrate the 20th anniversary. So, we have to remember that, like, what normally is our midpoint of the season isn't actually the midpoint of this season. And so, we're going to, is it the Siren Isles we're going to in 11.0.7?
Yeah, Siren Isles.
We get a ring, another Onyx Amulet.
Is it exactly the Onyx Amulet? Or it's like similar, basically?
Very, very similar. The key differences are now there's some gems you can get for it that are just pure stats, so it's not all effects driven. And then on top of that, this one is actually visual. You can see it on your character.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep,
I forgot about that.
Yep. So that's going to be pretty cool. We're going there. But I think we've talked about that a little bit already on the podcast. That's just some filler content. It's stuff that they already had. They're not designing much new for it. The zone existed from BFA. Like, they just never used it, which is an unused art asset. So that's coming. And then sometime in the new year, we're getting actual Season 2. I think it's called Undermined. So Undermined, but with a D.
Yes, Undermined.
What are your? I'm excited. I'm excited. Undermined. But what are your? Because I don't even think you know what Undermine is or had any idea Undermine existed before this announcement. So,
nope,
like, what are your initial thoughts? Like, when you saw it, what did you think?
Well, I originally thought of the guy from The Incredibles, the Underminer. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then, like, I saw some concept arts for it. And I was like, yeah, this seems pretty cool. Like, I was like, kind of techie, kind of like the Mechanome, vibe kind of deal. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of neat.
Yeah. So, have you ever played through the Goblin starting zone?
No.
Okay. One, we should definitely play through the Goblin starting zone on stream together, because I want to hear your commentary on a lot of it. No, I want to hear your commentary on a lot of it, especially before this season comes out. That's number one. Number two, Undermine has actually been referenced in WoW since before WoW came out. So, like, you can find like documentation and drawings of, like, Undermine being a part of the original design ideas for World of Warcraft. It was always supposed to be this huge underground goblin, like, city, just like this crazy. Okay, a little bit of a lore bit. I'm gonna drop a little lore. I know we got a lot to talk about, so I'm not gonna go super long on this. But essentially, let me see if I can just Google real fast. Goblin Rock Smart. See if that works. World of Warcraft. Is it Kejimite? I think is what it's called.
You're asking the wrong person, bro.
No, I think it's called Kejimite. It's like the Zandalari Trolls, Al-Khazan, Liberation, Dark Portal, Cartels. Yeah, Kejimite. There we go. Or Kejimite, whatever. So
you're definitely asking the wrong person.
No, but I'm sure somebody listening is like, yeah, you're right, Swag, you're right. It's Kejimite. So, anyways, the idea was that the goblins were actually kind of dumb. They weren't very smart. They were dumb. They were small creatures, and the trolls, specifically the Zandalari trolls, after the Sundering, kind of enslaved the goblins. They enslaved the goblins, and they were having them mine. Right, and so they were mining up underground and trying to bring wealth to the Zandalari and aid their technology. And in the process, the goblins were exposed to what's called Kagimite. Now it's argued like maybe this Kagimite was actually part of the original design from the Titans, or that there was Titan influence involved in this. But either way, upon finding the Kagimite, I don't remember if they were just near it, or I think they ate it, actually. I think they were actually eating the Kagimite. It might have just been that they were near it, but who knows? I can't remember off the top of my head right now. It made them get super smart. Super, super, super smart. They were brilliant. They started coming with crazy good inventions, and that's how they liberated themselves from the Zandalari trolls. And they founded Undermine. And then over time, as they ran out of the Kagimite to eat and or be near or whatever it was, their inventions started to get worse because their heightened intelligence kind of lowered a bit. Right? They're still smart. They're still good inventors, but it just wasn't what it was before. That's when they started turning towards mercantilism. They were kind of at war with each other a lot, taking advantage of each other. A lot of money focus at that point, right? That's and obviously now the joke that goblin engineering always explodes, right? So before they got dumber, it didn't, right? So they were dumb, then they got super smart, then they got a little bit dumber, and so that's where trolls are now. Undermine is a part of that whole story. That Undermine was where they were kind of mining, and it's where they kind of established their city after freeing themselves from the trolls. This whole thing. So Undermine's been in the lore for a long time. The Goblin Starting Zone even talks about it. The main raid boss, as far as we can tell, should be the final raid boss. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. But he was the faction leader for the goblins that are part of the Horde. But I am just blanking on his name right now. But he was a part of the Horde for a minute as their faction leader, but nobody ever trusted him. And now he's hiding away, and it's on us to try and get him out.
Gallowix?
Gallowix, yeah. Now, I don't know totally why he is... I don't know totally what this has to do with the war with... I don't know if it has much to do with the Xalatath stuff, to be honest with you, but we are underground, and I do think Blizzard said, hey, we have an underground expansion. We finally made the technology to have underground zones. This is our one shot to do it, right? If you're gonna have Undermine, this is the time to do Undermine. So I don't blame them. To me, it doesn't have to have any relevance to the lore in terms of Xalatath stuff. They could just be because we've had the goblins, we've had goblins we've already seen sneaking into Halifal and Ashgahet and stuff like that. So and the Ringing Deep. So there's already the influence of the goblins in those zones. I don't necessarily need Xalatath to then show up in the middle of Undermine and be I'm using Undermine now, right? Right. I'm fine with it just being a fun little side mission.
Yeah.
However, what are your thoughts on the zone, dude? Because I know you love that engineering. You play gnomes a lot. You love that kind of mechanical goofiness that WoW often has. Those things I always see interest you the most naturally in your mount choices and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of things on it. I've seen a couple of the screen grabs and a couple things like that. And to be honest, I think it looks really cool. I might have to whip out my Mecha Gnome Hunter again and start leveling up to 80 just so I can feel the vibes. Yeah. But yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. And I've always liked that Mechagon kind of vibe. It just, I don't know. There's just something that kind of just clicks with it with me. And yeah, no, I'm pretty excited for it. I'm not super excited about the dungeon pool, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I think the concepts in it, the Undermine, just the zone looks pretty cool. Obviously Mario Kart's pretty cool, so I'm gonna enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that means that we're not gonna get flying though in this zone, right? I'm assuming that the drive, that's what they're calling it, so DRIV, that drive is gonna be similar to it's gonna be ground skyriding basically, but we're not gonna have skyriding in the zone, which is fair, by the way. If they create cool ways to traverse the area and they want us to experience it a certain way, that's fine with me. I know people complain when it's I can't fly in the zone, my life is ruined. I'm listen, the zone was designed for a certain experience. flying is cool, but also flying sometimes ruins different experiences. And I think if it's a big city or it's supposed to feel like a big underground city, the moment you start flying, it no longer feels big. And so I think being on the ground level, looking up at buildings, is what they want us to experience.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The only thing that I don't like is the fact that they've given us this like really fast way of getting around, but then they're just going to say, hey, actually, you can't fly at 800% speed anymore. You gotta ride around at 100% speed.
Yeah.
So I do think you're right. I do think they're going to be like, sorry, like this underground zone, you just can't fly in.
Yeah.
But
now it might be
this
smaller though, right? They might make a smaller zone. Like zones right now are huge to accommodate for dragon riding.
Yeah.
So you can go faster, but it also just takes you way longer to get anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's true. I guess I didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, but also too, I think the drive, the car mechanic is gonna. I'm assuming it's gonna be a lot faster than normal ground speed. Like we're probably talking like 200, 250 speed on the ground.
Yeah, that's kind of
not
what I'm
more.
thinking.
If not like 300, it might be crazy. 400 maybe, maybe 500. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what they do with this drive thing. I'm not 100% sold on it. It's also kind of like it kind of reminds me of like the dragon sky riding, like things that you could do where you could do like the dragon races where it was cool to do like a couple, but then I was like, like it's just not really for me.
My thing though, dude, is I love logging into GTA and just driving. I love just driving Grand Theft Auto, right? So if the driving feels good and there's like compelling places to drive, right? Like if you're like, oh yeah, like these roads feel good, this mechanic feels good, I'm happy. I'm a happy dude, right? So in my head, I have to mentally be like, this won't feel like me riding a ground mount as they currently are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
that's my thought at least.
I mean, I think it's a pretty decent thought.
Yeah, dude. So we got a new Mythic Plus season coming up. You mentioned that you're not super thrilled about the new dungeons. You want to just take a second and talk through those?
Yeah, so let's talk about, and funny enough, I've put on our show notes that I wrote yesterday, the Season 2 dungeon predictions, because at the time, they only told us about the Mother Lode, which is a battle for Azeroth, and then they gave us the new dungeon, Operation Floodgate, and that's the only two we knew. And then I think today this says 9 hours ago, so sometime today at like 1 o'clock Eastern time, they're like, it's like we're just going to tell you the rest of the dungeons. So they added, and what we joked around in our guild a lot, that it was going to be Plaguefall, which is an absolutely atrocious dungeon, but they did add Theater of Pain, which I'm like, I'm
hoping they fix some of the awkwardness of Theater of Pain. There are just some spots in Theater of Pain where it feels weird. But bosses weren't terrible for the most part, but we'll see.
Yeah, Theater of Pain was one of those weird ones that I kind of had to like think about it and like remember like, oh, what was this dungeon? But then I remember and I was like, that one wasn't like the greatest.
Dude, I was sitting here hoping for Halls of Atonement. I would have taken Halls.
Yeah, I would have taken Halls too. Halls was a pretty good dungeon.
Okay, honestly too, you know, like with the Undermine, with all the mechanical stuff going on, with all the cartels, right? With all the cartels that we're fighting off against, I actually would have taken like a Tazavesh. Was it Streets? I would have taken Tazavesh Streets instead of Fight Club or whatever it's called. Again,
Fight Club,
right? Because that still kind of has that cartel feel. It kind of has that like city heisty kind of feel to it, right? You're running through. I think that would have been better. It would have thematically
I think it would
fit
have been too.
The other one that I wish was in the rotation, and not because it's a great dungeon, but thematically, and I was trying to predict it. I tried so hard to predict it, but it didn't happen. I think they should have had Storm Stout Brewery from Mists of Pandaria in rotation, because we have the Meadery. And I feel like Storm Stout Brewery and the Meadery they're basically the same dungeon in terms of like, they're kind of goofy. They have this alcohol focus, but then like half of it's not serious at all, right? Like both of them have like beer monsters basically, or one's like a mead monster, right? And so it is it's cute. It's cute watching it. watching both of them, and I'm like, man, it would have been cool to have them both together in the same season, so people could be like, oh wow, this is the meadery, and this is the dungeon that inspired the meadery. I wish we could have had both. So that's a bummer. The floodgates is cool to me. I think that'll be interesting to see what the new dungeon is like. How do I say this? I am nervous for pretty much all of the incoming War Within dungeons. And I say that with like an asterisk. I say with an asterisk. I'm nervous because how they are right now kind of sucks for M+. Like Dark Flame Cleft would be horrible in M+. Like that whole darkness mechanic.
You think?
That darkness mechanic, pushing the cart all slow and stuff, like that's gonna be so unfun.
Oh, that's right. That is
Priory, dude. Those consecrates will just decimate.
Oh yeah,
decimate.
They will. Oh my goodness.
Right. Meadery seems fine to me right now. There's nothing meadery. Meadery seems fine. And then what's the other one? We have
the Rook. The Rookery.
Yeah, the Rookery's fine. I mean, Rookery's fine.
That one's not a bad one.
There's a lot of slows happening in the Rookery, though, so we'll see what that feels like. But
yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. But Dark Flame Cleft, Priory, Rookery. But the thing, though, too, to keep in mind with all four of those is my assumption is Blizzard made 8 dungeons, and then they said, okay, all 8 play good. We're going to take these 4 and make them viable for Mythic and Mythic Plus. Because I don't think you can do the other 4 in even just normal Mythic right now, right? I think you can do them in normal Heroic. So I'm just assuming, I'm hopefully assuming that Blizzard just said, we're not even going to bother trying to tune them for M+ until we have to get to that point, and we're just going to focus on the dungeons that need to be tuned for M+ right now. And so my assumption is that we're going to see major changes to those 4 incoming new dungeons that make them more viable for M+. Like Meadery probably won't have a lot of changes. Rookery probably won't have a lot of changes. I think we'll see a lot in Dark Flame, and I think we'll see a lot in Priory.
Okay. No, I think you almost have to make some changes in Dark Flame. Yeah, and now that you're bringing that up, I'm like, that does sound awful. Like literally awful.
Yeah, I'm just assuming though they tune them to be fun for normal and heroic, and just haven't taken a look at them until now to make them viable for Mythic. That's my assumption. I'm hoping I'm right. I think I am right based on the way they play, but we'll find out.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the last dungeon that they announced was Workshop, Mechagon Workshop, which I thought was kind of weird. I was like, can you have just one and not the other? Like, that just feels weird.
It feels illegal, right? Yeah.
So... yeah, that one, I don't know how I feel about that one. And
I think it makes sense because thematically Workshop feels more goblin-y and underground than Mechagon, what was it, Junkyard?
Yeah, Junkyard. Yeah, Junkyard didn't seem like... But then I'm like, Theater of Pain is just kind of sitting there. Like, we have a very, like, goblin-y, like, Mechagon, like... kind of vibe with the other 3.
They should have given us streets, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing.
I'm kind of seeing that because I don't think there was any... I feel like they wanted to throw Shadowlands in there because it's like, oh, we got to throw in Shadowlands.
I think Shadowlands are easy because there's probably not a lot of changes that have to be made.
Oh,
so
no, there's not.
Shadowlands becomes easy. I think they're also starting to feel the need to cycle them in. I've heard people complain. The problem is the people who complain about Shadowlands dungeons being put in are the ones who like played them 8 hours a day on stream all day long for 2 years straight, right?
Yeah,
but I think the average player, and if I'm wrong, chat, if we're wrong, like, correct me. Correct me in the comments, correct me on Discord, wherever you want. Totally fine. I get it. I want to know what the people are saying. But I think the average person is like, oh, yeah, dude, I liked some of these Shadowland dungeons. This will be fun. I remember this. I think the normal player likes having dungeons come in that they remember how those dungeons work. Because you're like, okay, dungeons are coming, but there's one. There's one in here. I remember the mechanics. I remember this stuff. I'm extra excited for that one. And that usually ends up being the one that you, like, start with, that you're more willing to push a little bit as you get to know the other ones. It's like your entry dungeon.
Yeah, no, I agree, dude. Yeah, I think it's a nice starting place for people. Like you said, they don't have to, do a ton of research maybe or come in and wonder what's going on and kind of just jump into one and get a flavor for it.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot of content that they're coming out with, and I'm kind of excited.
I am too. I think Blizzard has had a very good cadence. I based upon what they're showing us on the chart, I think there's a good shot that we're gonna get the next expansion faster than we've ever gotten an expansion before.
Yeah, dude.
And
my
I'm not
goodness.
complaining about that. I know some people are like, but they're just trying to make more money. They're putting them out faster. And I'm like, dude, listen, I'm gonna buy the expansion either way. And I'd rather have like 3 good seasons and then a new expansion than 3 good seasons and like a 4th just filler season, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah,
That's just me.
I agree. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Although I still think we're going to have that like filler season. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to be near as long. I think it'll only be like a couple months.
I think so. And they'll probably do like Legion remix based upon some stuff we've seen in interviews and things.
Yeah.
Dude, before we get to interviews, I just want to hear your quick thoughts. The Mountain Dew promotion's been going on right now. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I know the trolley promotion has been going on too, and I actually got a code from our guildmaster, which shout out to her.
Dope.
And it's kind of neat. I kind of want to do it so I can get the what's it called, the meat wagon, but no,
you get the
meat
motorcycle.
wagon, something else.
Yeah, the meat wagon. I think. Because the meat wagon was originally just for the battle chest version, I think, of Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Yes, that's what the meat wagon is.
Now I think they're offering it with the bundle for the new Warcraft 1 and 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I bought Warcraft 3 Reforged, the meat wagon edition, just because I wanted meat wagon. I've never even opened the game. Never even opened the game.
Oh my
I bought
God.
it. Dude, I bought this like years ago, like 3 years ago.
That sounds like something you do, actually.
Yep, 100%. But speaking of which, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I was talking to people. They're listening to the podcast. They know who I'm talking about. That's fine. There's no hate. But I'm gonna make fun of them. Because I like making fun of people.
Yes,
I have heard so many stories of people going out, buying Mountain Dew for the code, and then pouring it down the sink.
What?
Yeah, and I'm just like, and there's something in me that I genuinely really don't like that. There's something in me that just genuinely really doesn't like that. And I don't think it's because of this specifically. I think it's because I've seen a long running trend in WoW where like mount collectors or appearance collectors in general get like really like there's this level of like FOMO. I don't have a problem with FOMO. I think FOMO is fine. I think it's on people to realize it's okay to miss out sometimes. But like, why I think I dislike it is because it reminds me of Plunderstorm, of everybody running into the storm on repeat so they could like farm points.
Yeah.
They could farm points to fill up the battle pass. I think it reminds me of that. I think that's why when I hear people talk about it, there's something in me that just like grinds like real hard, and I'm like, ugh, like I just internally like I feel it. Like it's this like in my chest. I feel this like ugh.
I think it makes you want to cry.
No, yeah, I don't know how to explain it entirely, but and again, they're probably listening. I've talked to multiple people, so you're not if you think it's you're not the only one. I've talked to probably 6 or 7 people who have told me they're doing this. And part of it's just kind of like,
wait, why do they dump it out?
Because they're not going to drink it. They just want that.
They just want to donate it.
Yeah, but how are you going to do it? Like the amount of effort it takes to like donate that. Like, what does that even mean? If I had thought about it, I probably would have, because I would have like worked with some of those students I work with and just been like, hey guys, cash at me for the sodas. I'll send you the codes and I'll just give the soda cans to the teens or something.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where you're kind of like, yeah, I mean, they're going to do it, right? Like, just like I bought Warcraft 3 Reforged and then never opened it because I wanted them out. It's kind of that same concept of like, hey, we're going out, we're buying a product, but we're not going to drink the product. We're just going to like dump it. It's 100% the same. So like, I'm doing the thing. I do the thing I complain about, right? But also maybe I'm saying that as somebody who avidly drinks Mountain Dew frequently enough. And so, like, part of me is like, oh, wow, they're offering a promotion with a product that I enjoy taking part in, and it's a product I like. And then I'm like watching other, and it's like, wow, cool. And I'm watching other people go like, ew, I hate Mountain Dew. Let me go buy 30 cans and then pour them out. I'm like, okay. And again, though, I remember back when like they did their first Mountain Dew promotion. But back then, gaming culture was different. Like everybody who gamed back then was into Mountain Dew and Doritos.
Oh my goodness,
and being as unhealthy as humanly possible. So
dude, that was like the drink.
It is a culture change. And so again, if that's you and you're listening, listen. You make me cringe, but I still love you. I still love you. But I don't know why. I can't really put to words like the feeling I have around it of like, I almost want to be like, why can't we just have nice things? But then at the same time, I'm like, it's also just Mountain Dew being poured down the drain. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter.
Basically like battery acid anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's probably better not going in your body anyway. So who knows?
Yeah, let's be honest.
Who knows? But it's just been a weird experience I'm feeling. I don't have as much time today. I think we've been going really over with the podcast lately, which is fun, but I'm a little bit more time limited. So I want to hit on a couple major points from the interview that we saw recently before we go into our listener questions.
Yeah.
But there was this interview that they had with the comeback kids where they interviewed Ian from Blizzard. He's high level over there. Ian Hazakostas. By the way, I love watching him in interviews. He always does such a great job explaining WoW and being relatable with people, and like you can tell he genuinely cares about the game. Have you seen this interview?
No, but I've looked over the highlights of it, and I mean, I think everything that he said is, I mean, everything that people are concerned about, right? I think it's literally what everyone is complaining about. It's not like it's just the 1%ers that are like basically, farming mythic queen, this is like, hey, this is targeting like real people that play the game every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the difficulty is, and it was really nice to in the interview to hear him talk about how they recognize that Mythic Plus rewards and Mythic Plus difficulty in conjunction with delves just doesn't feel right now. Right? Like to hear them be like, hey, we're not fully happy with how this turned out is good. Because like there's sometimes where you're just like, is this the plan? Is this what they want? Is this the goal? And so basically what they said was like, we recognize a couple things. One, if you're doing delves, right? And you're cranking out delves and you have your hero track gear, right? And then you're like, oh, maybe I want to go do a mythic dungeon. Unless you're doing a +8, like what?
There's no point.
There's no point. It's not beneficial to you, right? And then it's like, okay, well, who the heck is starting in a +8, right? And you might be like, well, 8's not that crazy high to think about. But this is in comparison, like we looked at this like 2 years ago or even 1 year ago, right? This would have been a +18. Right, and +2s are supposed to be your entry level into Mythic Plus, so you're jumping up 16 levels. Now it's a +8, so you're jumping up 6 levels or whatever, but you're jumping to the 8th one, right? And that's difficult. Like learning dungeons for the first time, Mythic Plus for the first time in +8s, even just for that season, even if you have experience in them.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Is wildly difficult, right? And so it's not, players are making the jump over and it's not fun. And then they're like, okay, well, I have to learn these dungeons, so I gotta do lower ones, but then there's no reward. They're not giving you anything that's beneficial. And I'm hearing like personally, Ian mentions it, but I've heard a lot through Twitter or on X, especially of people complaining of like, Delves don't give good enough gear. Why can't I get Myth Track gear from Delves? I should be getting Myth Track from Delves. And do I even want to say this? Do I want to get myself canceled? Delves are easy. Delves are so stupid easy. Listen, guys, I don't do Delves anymore, but when I was doing Delves, I would literally put Netflix on and watch anime, or I'd put Crunchyroll on and watch anime. And just smack buttons and complete the delve in time with my life. I don't think I died one time. Was I playing a tank? Yes, I was playing a tank. Okay, I get it. But even still, right? Like the problem is, and it's the same as the Mythic Plus problem, is people are getting way better gear, doing way easier content, and so like. I don't know if the delve community would they like delves if delves were actually at that same, like if they were the appropriate difficulty level to give Myth Track gear, even just in the vault, right? Just as M Plus does, just a Myth Track slot in the vault.
Yeah.
What would the appropriate difficulty level be, and would players be upset with that?
Yeah, see, I think it would probably have to be relatively high. Like, I think it would have to be like easily like a 10 or 11. And to be completely transparent and honest, I tried an 11 by myself and it was not easy. Like you would 100% have to do it with other people. It would not be soloable. There's no way.
They're not that bad. They're not that bad.
An 11?
Yeah, they're not that bad. Right? Like they would probably need to push up to like a 14. There's no 14 right now, but 14 would probably close to that range.
Dude, I don't know what 11 you were doing, but that 11 I tried last night was not easy.
All right, well, why not try to run another one just to double check and confirm. But I do think, right, that's the question too. And by the way, I think it's okay sometimes to be like, hey, it's really hard and maybe not reasonable to make solo content that is at the same difficulty level as teamwork content.
Yeah.
I think inherently teamwork content will probably almost always be more difficult because you're needing there's that level of needing to learn how to navigate with another person. I will say though, to the point of being a tank though, they did say Brand's coming back, and then you'll have a tank option.
Yeah.
Tank option, which I think is good. I'm assuming it'll be based on like if you attack first, then he'll run over and start tanking that thing.
Yeah.
But I think it
makes it easier for healers.
Yep. I think one of the difficulties right now with delves is just that like certain specs, certain classes just excel at them and some don't. And they could try to make it like mage towers, where in the mage tower there's like groupings of different roles and classes and stuff, so that it was balanced for everybody. But then to do that for like all 10 delves or whatever it is, I think would just get wild. So I don't think that's reasonable. So how do you make something that's a consistent experience that is still doable across all specs and all playstyles?
Yeah,
that's a little bit harder. But again, I just don't know what the answer is. My thing though is like, I think it's the same. I hate to say it this way. I think it's the same as the Mountain Dew thing. I think it's the same as the Plunger Storm issue. And the Mountain Dew one, I'm just joking about because it's funny to joke about. I'm not that bothered by it.
Funny.
I'm not that bothered by it. It's not that big of a deal. But it plays into, I think, conceptually the same thing. Players want stuff. And players want stuff, and they'll do whatever it takes to get stuff. Right?
Yeah, especially if it's just money.
Money's
the easiest one, right?
Yeah, right. But then they'll complain about that one too. And players will complain to the moment that they can't get stuff, right? The moment that stuff is unavailable. And so if a player's saying, I only want to do solo content, and then they turn around and go, oh no, because I only want to do one type of content, I can't get this thing I want. Okay, that's on you. That's on you. Stop complaining. I hate to say it that way, but stop complaining. That's kind of mean of me to say that, but at the same time, right, like, don't open up an MMORPG and then be like, I'm mad that the solo content can't give me everything this game has to offer.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my rant. That's my rant of the day. That was a little brutal of me. I do apologize. I love you guys. Our listeners are amazing. But again, if you relegate yourself to just one thing, recognize that there's limitations to that.
Yeah. I mean, but to play the devil's advocate, I would hope that people wouldn't be like, hey, I'm not going to like push high-end content, but I also want to have like myth track gear. Yes. Like I would hope people wouldn't think that, because that just doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's a level to which players were fine with a previous system, right? Where you could, once you proved you could do a +8 or 10 or whatever, you like unlocked the upgrade, and then you just like farmed whatever the
farm twos,
farm twos all day long, right? Now, with that said, though, that there's a reason why they moved away from that system. There's a reason why that's not in place anymore. But it is all interesting and super subjective to some of this stuff. But my thing is, I guess like I get worried. I just get worried that like what we'll get because people are asking for something is actually like just not good, right? Like I never want to be like, oh wow, I can just not do M+ and go do delves instead because delves are 10 times easier, right? I would want it to be like, hey, I can get the same level of gear from both, but they're equally difficult. Which do I have more fun doing? That's fine with me. If they can pull that off, that's fine with me. I actually think Raid and M Plus can often be that way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, personally, I don't think Delve should give Myth Track gear. Like, I'm even on like the fence of them giving Hero Track gear.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think I think they had to do that to give incentive for people to play it. I think they had to.
Yeah, and I think the problem though is the more they raise gear, the more they're going to create a problem with the exact issue. And by the way, the reason why this comes out is because Ian hinted that they might be offering Myth Track gear in the future. The problem is, the other problem that they were trying to address was that, Delves were just stupidly easy. And it was their, I mean, they didn't say stupidly easy, but they did acknowledge that players were already getting geared up and ready to go long before they jumped into Mythic Plus. And so then what do you do, right? And so if they add Myth Track, it just accentuates that problem. So, you know, how do you fix that problem? Anyways, we have some questions from our listeners that we want to talk about. If you are listening to our podcast and you're like, dude, I want to put my question there. I got some things that you guys are talking about. And it doesn't always have to be a question. It can always just be a comment. I like your comments too. If you want to leave us a comment just on whatever, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can leave a comment on the platform you're listening on. Those are the hardest for us to find because we really, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't go through every platform that this podcast is on and check the comment sections in them all. I think I personally will glance at Spotify. That's because that's where I listen. But I don't usually check the others. I know Apple Podcast, I think, is our highest platform, but because I don't use Apple Podcast, I never see it. So you could do it there, but my advice would be you can either jump on our Discord and ask in the Discord. There's a link down in the description, or there's a text-in feature. You'll see in the description of the podcast. It says send a text. If you click that, it'll open up your text messenger app, and you can text in your questions. That does not, let me clarify, that does not give us your phone number. It really doesn't give any information about you other than maybe the last 4 digits of your number. So we ask if you text in a question, put a name on it, give us a name. Your character's name is probably the best. Maybe character and server if you want. That's always fun too. So you can either do it on Discord through the questions for the pod channel or that text in service. Those are some great ways. So, Chicken, you want to read our first question?
Yeah, so I'll read it because it's mostly geared towards you because I have not been playing the game very long. So this was from Aquila. This question is for more for swag, is how they start. As another player who's been playing since 2004 and raising during most of it, sorry. What has kept you playing for this long? What has kept you coming back to WoW, as well as how have you adapted to the playstyle changes throughout the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the wild thing about it is like it's always been so different. And it's weird thinking back because I know how I play WoW now, right? So the swag now, right, just finished a season of me raid leading Heroic. I'm very active with my guild, putting on events throughout the week. Tomorrow I have to host a Mythic Plus event for my guildies to form groups and do stuff together.
Woo!
I enjoy Mythic Plus. Right now I'm trying to push for all my portals, so I'm in that like mid-range, right, of players, upper mid-range, I would say, probably for me, pushing portals. That might be even just upper range. I don't know. It's hard to tell because a lot of the people I listen to are like crazy busted good at the game, so I don't even know what normal is anymore.
Hey, you're crazy busted good at the game.
Well, I don't know though, because I feel like I'm in the medium range, so I don't know.
Don't sell yourself short, King.
So, anyways, that's how I play WoW now. But when I started playing WoW, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast. I didn't have money. I was a middle school kid. My parents were not going to pay for some subscription game, and I didn't have any money to sneak out to Target every month and pick up a new card or game time. Or every other month, I think it was 2 months at a time. And so I was literally just making characters, leveling them up to, I think like 19 was like the furthest I ever got. And I would just run Shadowfang Keep. And that to me was the coolest freaking thing in the world. Like I would level up characters and then try to get into Shadowfang Keep and run that dungeon. And I just thought it was awesome. And I made one of every class, one of every race. I was trying them all, and it was so cool. I think my first was actually a warlock, an undead warlock. And
oh wow,
yeah, contrary to popular belief, my name Swaglock actually has nothing to do with warlocks and WoW. Very coincidental. maybe one day I'll main a warlock and the prophecy will become true. But for the time being,
you warlock tank.
Yeah, but then I think through in Wrath of the Lich King, they started coming out with those like harder dungeons at max level. Wrath was when I first hit max level. I remember I got to 60, and as soon as I got to 60, I'm like, I'm making a Death Knight. I can finally do it. I think I got a Druid. I think it was a Druid. I got to 60. I made a Death Knight, and I started maining Death Knight. I'm pretty sure I mained Frost. So Chicken, back then, Frost, Blood, and Unholy could all be tanks. You could all tank or DPS on any of them. Blood was more of a DPS spec, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And so Frost was a better tank spec because it was all about like cold defensive stuff. But then I used Unholy for my PvP spec.
Yeah.
So I PvP'd a bunch back then. Like I PvP'd a lot.
I remember you.
In Wrath. And I was tanking a bunch. I don't know if I ever tanked Raid. I have faint memories of tanking Icecrown Citadel. And I don't, again, my memory's hazy around that era for whatever reason. Hazy memory of tanking Icecrown Citadel. I remember those standing in Dalaran and always trying to like upgrade my armor, buy the next armor set with like stuff I was earning from Raid and for PvP. And I was doing a lot of dungeons because dungeons were cool, but it wasn't like Mythic plus dungeons. It was just like you're kind of gear farming dungeons. But that was a lot of fun. And so I was starting to test some things, but I'm pretty sure I remember fighting early raid bosses in Wrath, and I just don't remember what the concept, because there was no LFR at the time, so I was actively finding groups. I don't know if I was in a guild. I don't have any recollection of how any of that occurred, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know how I got into any of it, but I was there. I just know I was there killing bosses. So
you just showed up.
As Wrath ended, I ran out of money, and so I didn't play during CAT. I think I was like off to college, and then at some point in college, I got back into Pandaria, and I was playing the heck out of Pandaria. I loved Pandaria. Pandaria was a blast. I don't want to take too long to tell my whole story. And then WoD, I played a bit of WoD. And I was doing like LFR nonstop. I think I did some normal raiding, especially Siege of Orgrimmar. Raided the heck out of Siege of Orgrimmar. And then I went into WoD, and I quested to max level in WoD, but I don't know if I actually did anything beyond that. I think I only played a little bit of WoD, and then I ran out of time to play, and I think school got really busy. And then I graduated, came home, and just didn't have a PC. I think my PC fried when I was in college, and so I just didn't have a computer to game on. And it wasn't until right around when Shadowlands released that I wanted to get back into WoW again. I loved WoW, and I've always loved WoW. So I've been off and on over the years of playing WoW, but I love the game. For me, it's every time I've played it, it's always been a different aspect of the game that interests me. And right now, it's the competitive edge of WoW. I like challenging myself in like, dude, how big of a group can I pull in the dungeon? Like, how fast can we go? Like, that kind of stuff to me is like, it's really fun right now. So I think one of the things with WoW, well, two things. One, don't be afraid to try out different aspects of the game. You might hate PvP today. That's fine. If you're getting bored, though, with everything else, go try PvP, right? Go do some arenas. Go do some battlegrounds. And you're going to hate it because you're not going to know what you're doing. And then you're going to figure it out. And then you're going to enjoy it. And then you're going to be like, wow, this is new and this is exciting. It's the game I love, but a new aspect of it. And then you can get bored of PvP or you can get tired of PvP and be like, okay, you know what? I've never really pushed Mythic Plus. Let me go push Mythic Plus. Or I've never really seriously tried to raid hard. Let me try to find things. Number two, it's okay to take breaks and play other games. It is totally fine. Like, Chick and I always call it the Fortnite time, right? Like, there hits a point, we're probably getting close to it now, Chicken, where you and I are going to start playing a bunch of Fortnite together because it's just near the end of the season.
Yeah.
And it means when the next content comes out, we're more excited to get into the next season or whatever else happens because we took a second and played some other games and then came back.
Yeah, I don't know if we're just there. I'd get typically. I feel like it's around the time that like the 0.7 patch comes out, and that's like, okay, I'm ready to get out of this.
Yeah,
no, we'll definitely get there.
The last part of the question, and I think this is probably an important part of the question, and I didn't answer it at first, and now I'm just thinking about it. But they just said, as well, how have you adapted to playstyle change throughout the years? And that's an important one. That's a really important question. Chicken, if you ever go back and look at like old WoW raids, they're stupid easy, dude. They're so easy. Yeah. It's crazy. But when they came out, dude, that was hard content. That was difficult content. And then now you're like, that was difficult. The average skill of WoW players has gone up tremendously as time's gone on. It's continually improved. Mechanics have become more and more complex. I mean, you saw on Queen, web blades is a new style mechanic that I'm sure they're going to be implementing and stuff. We're going to be seeing more of that. Mechanics overlapping, dude. Mechanics overlapping was not a thing in like early WoW raids, right? And now it's like nonstop. But that's where the real difficulty comes. It's like, well, how do you handle this mechanic when this mechanic is also happening at the same time, and this mechanic is coming up 3 seconds later? So when it comes to play style, how I've adapted, you have to recognize that just because you were good at one point because you did something doesn't mean you'll be good again later for doing that same thing. I have met a lot of WoW players, especially while raiding, especially this season. I don't mind throwing people under the bus. There was a mage that we had on our raid team at the start of the season. He's not raiding with us now. He wasn't really able to progress with us as we moved into, more progressive content that was more difficult. We had to slim down the team. And one of the things I struggle with is as I would talk to this mage, he'd be like, dude, I've been playing mage forever. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad you know what you're doing. But then I would like look at his rotation, and his rotation was like as if he was playing back in Pandaria. Like he was doing things that like mages just don't do anymore. But they would have definitely done in Pandaria. And now, granted, I'm no mage expert. I actually had a guy in our guild who was incredible at mage look over his logs and be like, oh, yeah, this is what he's doing. I remember doing that rotation at that time. And I would talk to this guy and he'd be like, no, this is what I do. I've been doing it for so long. I know to do this. And it's like, hey, no, like, things change. And
they definitely do.
Even just seasonally, right? Like hero talents have radically changed how some classes are played, and then other classes are the exact same as they've always been. So it kind of depends, but never be afraid to like change up your play style to match whatever is current at the moment. Don't lock in to a point where you just can't change. Don't lock into a point where you can't change, because that's when the game's not going to become fun. You're no longer because you locked into that play style at some point because it was fun and efficient, and it's no longer fun or efficient. But you're gonna feel too stuck to it. So that's my advice, is like the game changes and like change with it. That's where I think a lot of the fun is learning. And you might be like, well, I don't like this class anymore. I liked how it played before and I don't like it now. Totally fine. But there are 30 some other specs out there to try. So you've got options.
Yeah. No, everything you just said makes I agree with it, because even just in the last 3 years that I've been here, everything's changed. I mean, oh my goodness, nothing's been the same. It's probably been longer than 3 years, maybe like 3.5, 4. But yeah, nothing's. No. Oh my goodness, even just talking like back in Shadowlands, like how different things are now. Oh my goodness.
Okay, last bit. Sorry, I love this question, Nikila. Thank you so much for this question. I love this question. Last bit. As I'm just thinking more about it, one thing that has constantly kept me connected to WoW. WoW's community is incredible. It really is. It really, truly is. There is no gaming community out there like the World of Warcraft community. And we give it a hard time. We'll talk about how toxic it is. We'll talk about how terrible the players are, how terrible Asmongold is, or all these other things, right? Like, we'll rant about it. But man, my favorite people in the entire world I've met through World of Warcraft. Like, consistently, right? The guild system, finding a good guild, finding a good community, finding people that you just enjoy playing with. And every time I've come back to WoW, it's a different group of people. It's a different group of people that I find. But that always makes it so incredible. It's the people. WoW is made by the people you play with.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, yeah. Well, WoW is kind of one of those games.
And by
What
the
do
way,
they call them?
an MMO.
MMOs.
Yeah, an MMO, right? Yeah. And the thing is, it applies to everybody. It applies to everybody. And you might
Yeah,
be
it
like, no.
does.
And you might be like, Swag, I don't care about community. I just want to run keys. Well, guess what?
Yeah,
The best key runners are running in groups consistently, right?
they
They're
are.
getting to
Yeah,
know people. They're finding out who's good. They're building those relationships to run keys effectively. Same with the
Yeah,
raids.
you're
I
right.
mean, yeah, you could go do delves by yourself all day, every day. And if that's fun for you, that's what you want to do, awesome. But I think for the average person, like, even people love delves. I think the average person wants to have community. I think WoW offers that. All right,
They do.
we have a second question.
Yeah, this one is more of a comment.
But I
Well,
like
no,
it.
it's kind of a question. Kind of a
Yeah.
little bit of both. They're talking about. Okay, let's just read the question. So, question is, do you think you guys might ever roll a new tune or throughout the leveling and questing talk about it on the pod as like a side subject about how the game is and lore maybe? This one came from Galwin of Malagos. And this was a fan mail question actually.
I think it's Gulwan, like a Gulwan. Yeah. That's a U. I
Oh,
think you
yeah,
as a name.
sure.
Yeah, dude. What do you think of that? What do you think of the question?
Yeah, so I think it would be cool. I think it's kind of a cool little thing that we could do to talk about. I don't know if it would be something that we would do in retail. I could maybe see you how we were talking about it earlier, just maybe like doing it on like Classic is just kind of like a, hey, this is just something we're doing as, you know.
Yeah.
I personally am not a huge fan of leveling, but it might be a cool kind of thing to do and learn a little bit more of the lore. I know you're always trying to get me into that lore, man.
I do like lore. I mean, there's a couple things we could do. The thing is, I think if we actually leveled retail, it's a faster, more streamlined experience that actually would allow us to talk about some things. Whereas, I think classic leveling would be a lot, right? It would be a lot for us to record and then a lot for us to trim down. So, in terms of like the amount of time, that could be like a live stream, right? Like I could see maybe if we ever launch the YouTube channel, which I'm trying to do for the podcast, that maybe we can make that even like a live stream that we go through and talk about lore if that's an interest people have. I do think things like making you come do the Goblin starting zone. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, that would
I'd
be
love
cool
to hear your thoughts on that. I do think it's a great question and one that I want to just kind of think more about, right? Like it's an idea that I haven't thought of myself. And so as Chicken will tell you, like once I have an idea, I'm like, oh, let me mull over this for a minute and like see what that means. But no, I think that could be fun. I would love Chicken to go maybe even just like a live stream, even just on Twitch or something on my channel, just to stream and like talk to you about like what the zones we're in and the story behind the zones and like let you kind of experience that. That could be cool.
Yeah, if we ever do it, we got to play the same class.
Yeah. Well, especially if it's like classic, because in classic, like you might have class quests that take you like across the map.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think it would be cool, and I do like this question because it brings up the concept of, hey, if there's content that you guys are wanting us to explore, feel free to comment on it. Discord,
Absolutely.
Through fan mail. If there's something that you guys have enjoyed on the podcast, you want us to do more of, tell us. I mean, at the end of the day, Swag and I will probably sit here and say we enjoy doing it because we do. Yep. But at the end of the day, I mean, we could sit here and talk about WoW for hours and not record it.
Yeah. I mean, jokes aside, right? Like the number of times you and I will start a conversation, be like, wait, let's not talk about it. We got to save it for the podcast. We can't talk about it right now. Even
pretty frequently.
What was it at raid this week? I started to rant about something, and you just send me like a message, and you're like, "Hey, save it for the pod." I was like, "Oh, might be." Whoops, but
even though I'm pretty sure that was a joke, and I don't even remember what it was at this moment.
However, I think we are out of time for this week.
Yes, we are.
Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us on another episode of the Warband. This is episode 11. Last week's episode kind of blew up a little bit, and we're just so thankful. We're so thankful you guys are supporting the show and listening. We love getting your comments coming in. this was a project that we had talked about for a long time, something we want to do for a while, and to see it take off like it is has us just so excited. But ultimately, we're doing it because we want to connect with other people about World of Warcraft. And so never be afraid. Never be afraid to leave comments, to let us know your thoughts. If you want to correct us on something, totally fine. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, but that's the episode. We will see you next week.
We will see you next week unless I've died of sickness.